Hello everyone, my name is Saeed Tabar and I serve as the Director of MIS in the Research College of Business at the University of West Georgia here in the United States. I'm really excited to welcome you to our cryptography course. In this first video, we are going to lay the groundwork for everything that comes later. We will start by exploring the main pillars of cybersecurity, the core ideas that every security professional needs to understand. Then we will zoom out and paint a big picture view of what cryptography actually is, why it matters, and the different forms it can take. Think of this episode as building your security vocabulary. Before we get into the more advanced techniques, algorithms, and hands-on problem solving, we need a solid foundation. By the end of this video, you will be familiar with terms and concepts that will keep popping up throughout the entire series. So, grab a cup of coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive into the world of cybersecurity and cryptography together. So, before we go any deeper into cybersecurity, let's ask a really important question. What are we actually trying to protect? We often hear the word cyberspace, and it can sound like something abstract, like a digital galaxy floating somewhere out there. But cyberspace isn't an imaginary place at all. It's the entire digital environment we interact with every single day. It includes the devices right in front of you, your laptop, your phone, your tablet. It includes the invisible ecosystem connecting those devices, the Wi-Fi routers in your home, the cell towers down the street, the massive fiber optic cables running under the ocean, and the global internet infrastructure that ties everything together. It also includes all the software you rely on, your banking app, your email, your social media, your cloud storage, the apps running on corporate servers, and everything. But most importantly, cyberspace is the information itself. The photos you upload, the messages you send, the payments you authorize, your medical records, your passwords, the work your organization produces, every bit of data being transmitted or stored in this environment. So when we talk about cybersecurity, we are not just talking about hackers and firewalls. We are talking about protecting an entire digital ecosystem. All the systems, all the devices, all the applications, and all the information flowing between them. Our goal in cybersecurity is to protect every one of these assets, both the technology and the data, from harm, misuse, or unauthorized access. To organize everything we are trying to protect in cybersecurity, professionals rely on a simple but incredibly powerful model called the CIA Triad. Think of the CIA Triad as three massive pillars holding up the entire roof of security. If any one of these pillars cracks or collapses, the stability of the whole structure is at risk. That's how essential they are. These three pillars are confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Over the next few moments, we are going to break each of these down and see why they are the foundation of every security system, whether you're securing a personal laptop, a corporate network, or an entire cloud infrastructure. The beautiful thing about the CIA Triad is that once you understand these three ideas, you can analyze almost any security situation. A data breach, that's a confidentiality failure. A tampered document, integrity failure. A system outage, that's availability. By the end of this section, you will start recognizing these security pillars everywhere, and you will see how cryptography helps us strengthen all three. Let's start with the first pillar of the CIA Triad, confidentiality. This is usually the one people think of right away when they hear the word cybersecurity, because at its core, confidentiality is all about keeping secrets safe. More formally, confidentiality means that information is only accessible to people who are authorized to see it. If you don't have permission, you shouldn't be able to read it, guess it, intercept it, or stumble into it by accident. Now, confidentiality has two major components, and understanding both gives you a much clearer picture of why it matters so much. First, data confidentiality. This is the straightforward part, protecting your sensitive information. Think about things like your credit card number, your medical records, your tax documents, or even your private messages. Data confidentiality ensures that none of this ends up in the hand of people who shouldn't have it. If someone tries to snoop on your messages or steal your card info, confidentiality mechanisms like encryption make that information unreadable to anyone except the intended recipient. 2. Privacy. Privacy is related, but it goes a step further. Privacy is about your right to control your own personal information. Who collects it, how much of it they collect, what they do with it, and who they share it with. For example, you might be okay with your fitness app counting your steps, but not okay with it selling that data to an advertiser. Confidentiality protects the data itself, while privacy protects your choices about your data. So together, confidentiality and privacy give you control and protection. Control over who gets access to your data, and protection from anyone who shouldn't have it. And as we move deeper into cryptography, you will see that many of the tools we learn, like encryption, are specifically designed to support and strengthen this confidentiality pillar. Next up is the second pillar of the CIA Triad, integrity. If confidentiality is about keeping secrets, integrity is about trust. Trust that the information you are looking at is real, accurate, and hasn't been secretly changed along the way. Let's make this concrete. Imagine you send a message to your bank that says, "Pay Alex $100." You want to trust that by the time your bank receives that message, it still says exactly what you intended. Integrity is what ensures that an attacker cannot sneak in, intercept your message, and quietly change it to "Pay Alex $1 million." When we talk about data integrity, that's exactly what we mean. Making sure the data you send, store, or receive hasn't been tampered with, whether by accident or on purpose. Tools like digital signatures, checksums, and message authentication codes are all designed to protect this aspect of security. But integrity doesn't stop at data. There is also something called system integrity, and this one is just as important. System integrity is the assurance that your computer, your router, your server, any device in the system are performing their functions correctly and haven't been modified by an unauthorized party. In other words, system integrity protects the behavior of the system, while data integrity protects the content flowing through it. So when we talk about integrity as a pillar of security, we are talking about the confidence that both your systems and your data are authentic, accurate, and trustworthy. Without integrity, even the most confidential or available systems lose their value because you simply cannot rely on them. The third pillar of the CIA Triad is availability, and this one answers a very simple question. Can authorized users access the system or information when they need it? Think about this. You sit down to check your online banking, type in your username and password, and nothing happens. The site doesn't load. The app keeps spinning. The service might as well have vanished into thin air. That's an availability failure. Availability is the assurance that systems, services, and data are up, responsive, and reliable, not just occasionally, but whenever legitimate users need them. A system that's secure but constantly offline is basically useless. One of the most common threats to availability is something called a denial of service attack or DOS attack. In a DOS attack, an attacker floods a system or network with so much bogus traffic that it becomes overwhelmed and stops responding to real users. It's like hundreds of fake customers crowding the entrance to a store so that the real customers cannot get inside. Maintaining availability isn't just about fighting off attacks, it's also about good engineering. It includes things like reliable service, server design, redundancy and backups, load balancing, monitoring and alerting, and solid disaster recovery planning. So, while confidentiality protects your secret and integrity ensures your data remains accurate, availability keeps everything running. Without it, even the most secure system becomes a brick. Together, these three pillars, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, form the foundation of everything we do in cybersecurity. Now, the CIA Triad gives us a strong foundation, but in modern cybersecurity, we often need a few additional concepts to fully secure a system. Think of these as supporting beams that strengthen the three main pillars. The first one is authenticity. Authenticity is all about verifying that something or someone is truly who they say they are. Is that email actually from your boss, or is it a phishing attempt? Is that file really from your colleague, or did someone slip in a fake version? Authenticity gives us confidence that messages, users, and systems are genuine and haven't been impersonated. The next supporting concept is accountability. This is the idea that every action in a system can be traced back to the responsible party. In other words, the system keeps a reliable trail of who did what and when. Accountability is essential for things like auditing, troubleshooting, fraud detection, and maintaining trust inside an organization. And finally, we have non-repudiation, a term that sounds a little legal because it basically is. Non-repudiation prevents someone from later denying their actions. If a message was sent, we can prove that it was sent. If a message was received, we can prove that it was received. A sender cannot claim, "I never sent that," and a receiver cannot say, "I never got it." Digital signatures and cryptographic proof are how we enforce these guarantees. Together, these three concepts, authenticity, accountability, and non-repudiation, add an extra layer of trustworthiness to our security model. They help ensure that not only is data protected, but we always know who interacted with it and whether those interactions were legitimate. Now that we understand what we are trying to protect, let's talk about what we're actually protecting it from. And this is where we need to be precise with our language, because in cybersecurity, words like threat and attack sound similar, but they mean very different things. A threat is simply a potential danger. It's something that could go wrong. For example, The fact that hackers exist and are motivated to steal data, that alone is a threat. Nothing has happened yet, but the potential for harm is very real. An attack, on the other hand, is when someone takes deliberate action to exploit a weakness. So if that same hacker actually tries to guess your password or inject malicious code into your system, that's no longer just a threat. That's an attack in progress. To defend against attacks, we rely on something called security services. Think of security services as the high-level protections we want to enforce. Things like authentication, data integrity, confidentiality, availability, and accountability. They are the goals or capabilities we want the system to provide. But these services don't just magically exist on their own. They're made possible by security mechanisms, which are the actual tools and technologies doing the heavy lifting. Examples include encryption algorithms that keep data unreadable to outsiders, digital signatures that prove authenticity, integrity checks that detect tampering, and access control systems that enforce rules about who can do what. So the big picture looks like this. Threats are potential dangers. Attacks are actual attempts to cause harm. Security services are the protections we want in place. Security mechanisms are the technical tools we use to build those protections. Understanding the relationship between these four ideas gives you a powerful mental map for navigating almost any cybersecurity scenario. Attacks themselves generally fall into two main categories, and understanding the difference makes it much easier to analyze what's happening during a real security incident. One, passive attacks. The keyword for passive attacks is observe. In a passive attack, the attacker's goal is simply to listen in or monitor what's happening without changing anything. Because passive attacks leave no trace, they're extremely hard to detect. There are two classic examples. Release of message contents. This is the straightforward version. Someone intercepts a message and reads it. It could be an email, a file transfer, a chat message, anything sent across a network. Traffic analysis. This one is more subtle. Even if the contents are encrypted, an attacker can still learn a lot just by observing the communication patterns. For example, if the CEO's computer suddenly starts sending huge amount of data to a server owned by a competitor, that alone is suspicious, even if the attacker cannot see what the data actually is. So passive attacks don't interrupt or modify the communication. They just quietly gather intelligence. That's what makes them so dangerous and so difficult to detect. 2. Active attacks. On the other side, we have active attacks where the attackers doesn't just observe, they interfere. Their goal is to alter data, disrupt operations, or insert themselves into a process. Active attacks come in several forms. Masquerade, pretending to be someone else, like logging in using a stolen credential or spoofing an identity. Replay attack, capturing a legitimate message and sending it again later, hoping the system will still accept it. It's like someone recording you say, "Open the gate," and replaying it to gain access. Modification attack, changing data as it travels. Maybe that message saying "pay Alex $100" gets intercepted and changed to "pay Alex $10,000. Denial of service attack, overloading or crashing a system so legitimate users cannot access it. essentially knocking a service offline. Active attacks tend to be easier to detect because something breaks or misbehaves, but they're usually harder to prevent. That's why modern security design focuses heavily on detection, response, and resilience. So if attacks are the enemy's playbook, then security services are our defensive toolkit, the set of protective abilities we rely on to keep systems safe. Think of each security service as a different tool designed for a specific kind of job. No single tool can stop every attack, but together they form a powerful defense system. We have services that ensure confidentiality, making sure unauthorized people cannot read our information. We have services that ensure integrity, keeping our data trustworthy and tamper-free. Then we have authentication services, which help us verify identity. And these come in two flavors: data origin authentication, which confirms who created a specific message, and pure entity authentication, which verifies the identity of the person or system we are communicating with during an ongoing session. Next, we have access control, which limits what authenticated users are allowed to do. Just because someone is logged in does not mean they should have access to everything. We also have tools that provide non-repudiation, which is the ability to prove that an action actually occurred so no one can deny sending or receiving information later on. And of course, we cannot forget about availability, making sure systems are up, responsive, and usable when legitimate users need them. Over the rest of this course, we are going to unpack each of these services one by one. You will learn what they mean, why they matter, and exactly how cryptographic tools like encryption, hashing, digital signatures, and keys work behind the scenes to make all of this possible. And that brings us to where we are headed next. At this point, we have built the vocabulary, we have laid the foundation, and we understand the big picture of what we are protecting and why. Now it's time to peel back and curtain and look at the engines that power all these security services, the cryptographic algorithms themselves. We're going to explore three major families of cryptography: keyless algorithms like hash functions, which transform data into fixed-size fingerprints; single key or symmetric algorithms, where one secret key is shared for both encryption and decryption; and two-key or asymmetric algorithms, which use a public key and a private key to enable secure communication. Each of these families solves a different problem, and together they form the backbone of modern cybersecurity. Things are about to get really interesting as we start unpacking how these algorithms work and how they protect real-world systems. The first family of cryptographic algorithms is called keyless algorithms, and the name gives it away. These algorithms do not rely on any secret key at all. They operate solely on the input you give them. No passwords, no shared secrets, just pure mathematical transformation. The most important member of this family is the cryptographic hash function, and you can think of it like a high-tech digital fingerprint machine. Here is how it works. You feed in any kind of data, maybe a short word, a long document, a high-resolution photo, or even an entire movie file. And the hash function produces a small, fixed-length output called a hash value or digest. What makes hash function magical is the avalanche effect. If the input changes by even a single bit, one tiny flip of a 0 to a 1, the output hash changes completely, dramatically, and unpredictably. There is no way to tweak the input slightly and get a similar output. It's all or nothing. That's why hash functions are perfect for checking integrity. For example, you can hash a file today and then hash it again next week. If the two hashes match, the file hasn't been altered. If they differ even slightly, you know something changed, even if you don't know exactly why and what. Hashes are used everywhere, verifying downloads, checking passwords, detecting tampering, and more. But keyless algorithms do not stop there. Hash functions are also foundational building blocks for pseudo-random number generators, or PRNGs. These PRNGs are essential for generating the secure keys we will be talking about next. Keys that need to be unpredictable, unique, and mathematically strong. So even though keyless algorithms do not use keys themselves, they help create and protect the keys that power the rest of cryptography. In many ways, they are the quiet engine behind almost everything else we are about to explore. The second family of cryptographic algorithms is single key algorithms, also known as symmetric encryption. This is the classic lockbox analogy we introduced earlier. Here is how it works. Alice and Bob both share the exact same secret key. Alice uses that shared key to lock or encrypt her message. Bob then uses the same key to unlock or decrypt it. Because both encryption and decryption rely on the same secret, we call this symmetric encryption. Symmetric encryption has a couple of big advantages. It's incredibly fast and efficient, making it perfect for encrypting large amounts of data, like full database backups, video streams, or disk encryption on your laptop. Modern symmetric algorithms can secure gigabytes of data with minimal computational cost. But symmetric encryption also comes with one major challenge: the key exchange problem. How do Alice and Bob securely share that one secret key in the first place? If Alice just sends the key over the network, an attacker, often illustrated as Eve, could intercept it. And if Eve gets the key, she gets access to everything protected by that key. This challenge is one of the main reasons asymmetric cryptography was invented, which we will talk about soon. Within the symmetric family, there are two main types of ciphers. One, block ciphers. These encrypt data in fixed-size chunks, often 128 bits at a time. Algorithms like AES fall into this category. Block ciphers are structured, predictable, and extremely secure when used with the right modes of operation. 2. Stream ciphers. Instead of processing data in blocks, stream ciphers encrypt information bit by bit or byte by byte, generating a continuous key stream. They are lightweight, fast, and great for real-time applications. Think secure video calls or encrypted network traffic. A popular modern example is ChaCha20. Symmetric cryptography also includes message authentication codes, or MACs. A MAC is like a digital seal that proves a message hasn't been tampered with. It uses the same shared secret key to create a small tag. If the receiver recomputes the tag and it matches, they know two important things. The message hasn't been modified, which is integrity, and it came from someone who knows the shared key, authenticity. So in summary, symmetric algorithms are fast, powerful, and essential, but they depend on secure key sharing. And solving that problem is what leads us into our third family, two-key or asymmetric cryptography. This brings us to the third family of cryptographic algorithms, two-key algorithms, also known as asymmetric encryption. And this is where things get really exciting, because asymmetric crypto solves one of the biggest problems with symmetric encryption, the key exchange problem. Instead of relying on a single shared key, asymmetric encryption uses a mathematically linked key pairs. These two keys work together, but each key plays a completely different role. You start with a public key, and just like the name suggests, you can share it with absolutely everyone. Think of it like a public lock. Anyone can pick up this lock, drop a message inside, snap it shut, and send it your way. But here's the twist. Once the message is locked with your public key, only your private key, which you keep completely secret, can unlock it. That private key stays with you, ideally protected inside secure hardware or encrypted storage. This one idea completely changes what's possible in cybersecurity. It enables three major capabilities. One, digital signature. With asymmetric cryptography, you can use your private key to sign a message, and anyone with your public key can verify that signature. This gives us two powerful guarantees. Authentication, the message really came from you, and non-repudiation, you cannot later deny sending it. Digital signatures are the backbone of secure mail, software updates, blockchain, identity systems, you name it. Two, key exchange. Asymmetric encryption lets us securely exchange a symmetric key, which we can then use for fast, efficient encryption. This solves the exact key exchange problem we discussed earlier. Even if someone is listening to the network, they cannot extract the private half of your key pair or recover the exchange key. This hybrid approach, using asymmetric crypto to share a symmetric key, is how most modern secure communication works, including HTTPS. 3. User authentication. Your ability to prove who you are comes from one simple fact. Only you possess your private key. By demonstrating control of that key without revealing it, you can authenticate yourselves to servers, applications, and other users. So asymmetric cryptography doesn't just encrypt messages. It creates trust, enables secure communication, and forms the foundation for nearly every security protocol we rely on today. It's truly one of the most revolutionary innovations in modern computer science. Now, let's zoom out from the algorithms and look at how they are applied to protect a network. We can think about this in two complementary ways. First, we need to protect the communication itself, the data as it travels across the wire. That's communication security. Second, we need to protect the devices at the endpoints, your laptop, a web server, a router. That's device security. Communication security is all about protecting data in transit. It's implemented through network protocols, which are just agreed upon rules for how data is formatted and transmitted. A security protocol like TLS, which secures your web browsing, defines the rules for using your cryptographic algorithms to encrypt, authenticate, and ensure the integrity of data as it hops across the internet. It protects against both passive eavesdropping and active tampering. Now let's shift from the network itself to the machines that make everything run. While communication security protects data in transit, device security focuses on protecting the actual hardware and software at the edges of the network. Your computers, your servers, your routers, your firewalls, everything that acts as an endpoint or part of the infrastructure. These devices are constantly under threat from things like intruders trying to break in, malware trying to infect the system, and attacks that try to overwhelm or disable the device entirely. So we need strong defenses right at the device level. The first tool in our device security toolkit is the firewall. A firewall acts like a digital gatekeeper. It stands between your internal system and the outside world, filtering incoming and outgoing traffic based on a defined set of rules. If something doesn't meet the rules, the firewall blocks it. Simple as that. Next, we have Intrusion Detection System, or IDS. If the firewall is the gatekeeper, the IDS is the burglar alarm. It monitors activity inside the network or on a specific device, looking for patterns or behaviors that suggest an attack might be happening. And when it sees something suspicious, it raises an alert. IDS doesn't stop the attack on its own, but it makes sure you know the moment something weird is going on. Finally, we have Intrusion Prevention System, or IPS. IPS takes the idea of detection a step further. Instead of just sounding an alarm, it actually reacts. An IPS can automatically block malicious traffic, shut down suspicious connections, or take other immediate actions to stop an attack in its track. Think of it as a security guard who not only notices something wrong, but jumps in to prevent the damage. Device security might not sound as flashy as encryption or digital signatures, but in practice, it's absolutely essential. Without the strong firewalls, IDS, and IPS, even the best cryptography in the world won't stop an attacker who can simply break into the machine itself. Alright, we have talked a lot about math, algorithms, and machines. But there is one more piece of the security puzzle that is just as important, maybe even more important, and that's the human element. At the end of the day, every security system ultimately depends on one thing: trust. Think about it. How does one organization trust another organization with sensitive data? How do you trust that a website is legitimate and not a scam? How do systems trust each other enough to exchange keys, authenticate messages, or complete transactions? Trust sounds simple, but in cybersecurity, it's actually a very rich concept. Thankfully, we can break down the ways trust is established into a few clear categories. One, validated trust. This is trust based on evidence. For example, a security audit, a certification, or a digital certificate issued by a recognized authority. If a website presents a valid TLS certificate, your browser can verify that the site has been properly vetted. That's validated trust in action. 2. Direct historical trust. This is trust that grows out of experience. If two organizations have successfully exchanged data for years without issues, they naturally trust each other more. It's like trusting a friend who has always been reliable. 3. Mediated trust. Sometimes you don't know the other party well enough to trust them directly. That's where a mutually trusted third party comes in, like a certificate authority, CA, on the internet. The CA vouches for the identity of the other party, and both sides trust the CA. 4. Mandated trust. In some cases, trust isn't optional. A governing body, regulatory agency, or legal standard may require certain organizations to trust each other or to follow specific security frameworks. Think of mandated standards in healthcare, finance, or government sectors. So that wraps up chapter 1 of our cryptography course. We covered a lot of ground here, and what we have built is more than just a list of definitions. You now have a full framework for understanding information and network security. We started with the CIA Triad, the three foundational pillars of security: confidentiality, keeping secrets safe; integrity, keeping data trustworthy; availability, keeping systems running. Then we added the supporting concepts: authenticity, accountability, and non-repudiation, which strengthen the entire structure and help us verify identities and prove the legitimacy of actions. We learned how to distinguish threats from attacks and how attacks come in two major forms: passive attacks, where someone quietly observes, and active attacks, where someone actively interferes. From there, we explored the three families of cryptographic algorithms that power modern security: keyless algorithms like hash functions, single key or symmetric encryption, and two key or asymmetric encryption. Each family serves a different purpose, and together they form the engine of our entire defensive toolkit. We also saw how these tools are applied in real-world contexts, protecting communications, safeguarding devices, and supporting systems of trust between people, organizations, and technologies. All of this forms a crucial foundation. This chapter is the mental map that will guide you throughout the rest of the course. With this framework in place, you are ready to go deeper. In the next chapter, we will zoom in one of these algorithm families and start learning how these cryptography techniques actually work behind the scene. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more lessons. I'll see you in chapter 2.